Hello, everyone, and welcome. This is the 12th episode of Walking the Path. I'm here today with Kristin, and we're excited to jump into the topic today. Just before we do, we'll do brief introductions. So, Kristin, tell us a little bit about who you are and where you're at right now. What are you up to these days?
Hi, Christine. I'm really happy to be here for episode 12. Thank you. It's been a while since we recorded, and we've both been doing some traveling and workshops and things, so I'm glad that we could make the time today to do this. And physically right now I'm in Alberta, and we're on our way toward the East Coast to take a yoga teacher training program. And we're making lots of stops, visiting friends and family. And yeah, right now a topic that's been coming up is communicating our feelings to each other and the concept of truth speaking or speaking our truth. And so I'm looking forward to talking about that with you today. And yeah, I listen to a lot of people, and I do a lot of support with people, and that's something I encourage people to do. But I like to think there's kind of a productive way and a non-productive way of sharing our truth with others. So I'm looking forward to talking about that with you. Where are you at these days?
Great. Yeah, I've been doing a lot more one-on-one support, and with a range of clients. I've had some new clients referred to me that are more on the lower end and like suicide ideation, depression end. And it's just been really rewarding because it's like something that I've been through. And so I really know what it's like to be in that place where it just seems like there's no options and no choice. And the only way out is essentially death. Like that becomes like the only way out. And there are so many, but when we're isolated, we don't have the perspective to choose something different, right? We're not aware of all the resources available to us. We're not aware of all the people in the world that can support and love and cherish and nurture us if we've cut off from community. And I feel like a lot of people are going through isolation. It's an uncertain time on the planet, so it can really bring up this sense of, I don't want to do this anymore. So I just encourage everyone to get support, to resource themselves, to reach out, regardless of where you are. Even if you're in a great spot, who could you assist to uplift and, you know, allow everyone to feel supported through these times. So that's as an aside. And I look forward, to this topic today. It is really valuable because so often when someone says, I want to speak my truth, there's this element of force to it, right? And so going in kind of with their guns loaded it's just kind of a spiritual version of getting angry at someone.
I've done it. Hasn't gone well. Yeah, so I like how you said that, because one of the big things I've learned about speaking my truth, it's become very obvious a couple of times, is I've tended to be a bit passive. When my intuition or my gut instinct is going, little red flag kind of thing happens, and I'm like, no, it's okay, we're going to carry on here. And all of a sudden there's 2 red flags, and I'm like, things are getting a little uncomfortable. And then all of a sudden it's just like there's this flashing neon sign that's like, you've got to say something. And then at that point I find myself feeling pretty fired up, and then my truth doesn't really come out as kindly as it could, and it's friendly of a tone, or maybe the most conscious word choices, right? So the first thing I'd like to say is, if you feel like you need to say something because something's uncomfortable for you, I would like to encourage everyone to speak up sooner than later, because it's that phrase like, we can turn a mountain into a molehill, make a mountain out of a molehill. That's the saying. I was like, wait a minute, that sounds like a good idea. Okay, so yeah, instead of this little thing, it feels like this huge thing, and all of a sudden we're a volcano erupting, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it's also great to acknowledge that things are cumulative, right? And we all learned patterns of communication or non-communication through our childhoods, right? Whether people do express the moment something comes up, or you see them kind of like almost like pulse and then suppress or withdraw, or there's all sorts of patterns of not communicating based in it not feeling safe or not having the tools. And a lot of people were never taught to communicate what's going on within them to another, being like, hey, this is what's going on. I had this come up yesterday. This is what's kind of running through my head. Can you assist me with this, right? Can we come to some sort of, resolution here? Can we develop a different path for us to walk, or come to agreement to develop, conscious movement together? And often we're used to this me versus you, one versus the other, one being right, one being wrong. And I mean, that's, kind of warlike behavior that's in the human consciousness, but we're shifting out of that, right? So consciously, we just want to actually be on the same team and just acknowledge differences, acknowledge, hey, are you aware of this? This is something you're aware of, and they may be aware of it or not. And so that's so key. And then the other thing, acknowledging that whole cumulative piece is it's often not just about this time, it's about the 700 times when you didn't speak up, and this is the time you're going to, but now you're delivering 700 times worth of force and frustration to one person that wasn't there the 699 other times. So
yeah, absolutely. And I think more often than not, it's hardest to speak up to the people that are closest to us, because there's the greatest risk of a result that maybe we don't want, maybe that person being upset with us or rejecting us in some way. And, I think I went through most of my life with this desire for everyone to really like me. And I don't know if that's a female thing, or I don't know what it's like to be a man right now, but I know for sure as a woman, as a girl, in my younger years, it was like, be polite, be kind, and that translated into, be submissive, just be okay with it. It's fine. Just deal with it and carry on. And so in the last few years, especially, I've been like, I don't like this. I think I need to start creating healthy boundaries and standing up for myself. And so I went from this, like, I'm going to be kind and take it all, to I'm going to just be a warrior here and like bring in my sword and my shield. And in the last year, I've been really trying to bring that pendulum back to a balanced place. And I've spoken of this with many friends and people who are close to me. And it's been a beautiful journey trying to be really aware of where my intentions and my energy are at. So definitely in the last year, I've had some conversations that were overdue and did seem, right, they were this cumulative, like, I'm going to explode if I don't speak up now. And so I think a big piece of sharing how we feel, or sharing what's true for us, is speaking in the first person about ourselves, and something I like to do sometimes, if I feel like the conversation could potentially be uncomfortable, I will say to someone, I've got something that I really feel like I need to share with you. Is now a good time? Or when's a good time for us to have a heart-to-heart conversation? Or as you said, I can't remember how you just worded it, but sometimes there's a pattern of something that someone's doing that you might feel called to bring to their awareness. So just the other day, I was on the phone with a good friend, and she was sharing something, and I said, I've noticed this pattern that you have. I'd really love to share it with you, because I think you already know, but I'm just wondering if I could just share what I'm observing, because I think you're on the right path, and I'm just wondering if you're aware of this thing. And she said, I would love to hear that, and so really that's a bit of a different example, because it's not my truth. It's not how I'm feeling. It's just something that I was seeing in my lovely friend, who I just thought, I don't know if you're doing this, but maybe I could share it with you. So she was super grateful for that. But yeah, when it's funny too, the other thing I want to add in is, I think it's really important to know when to speak up and when to just let something go. What do you have to say about that?
Well, definitely the key is to acknowledge and ensure that there's the space to have the conversation. A lot of people, when they're really worked up, they tend not to be as in tune with the environment and with time and space. It's this urgent now. But if the person isn't available, emotionally, physically, on all levels, like available to have the conversation, then who are you having it for? right? If you really want to create a different reality or a different possibility with this person, then you want to ensure that they're there for the conversation. So if someone's like reading the paper on the phone, just right. I mean, it's so obvious when we are having an on the phone dialogue, because if they're not on the other end of the phone, you don't start talking. But in person, we do that with people when it's built up, and we're just like, I need to have this conversation now, and they're literally not online or their mind somewhere else. And so often that will validate, especially if people have that undertone of I'm not heard, people don't listen to me, people don't meet my needs. If there's any sort of undercurrent of that sort of kind of mental emotional tone, then often they'll choose the timing where the other person's not available, and then it will validate that backstory. So the key, if you actually want a different life, is to acknowledge what you're carrying first, and then just saying, okay, well, what if I could be understood this time? What if I could really, come to some resolution here? Like, so starting to develop a different narrative as well can assist. There's so many elements to it, but I would say the key is just ensuring that both people are available to have the conversation, and both people have been asked permission to have it. Because so often what we carry is just, it's the extreme version, like violation of free will, where someone just comes up and just delivers like guns blazing. You're like, whoa, what just happened, right? So being caught off guard or blindsided, or someone just deciding that they have to do this now, and you're like, hey, whoa, what's going on? I don't even know what's happening here. And so there's been a lot of confusion and around those sorts of conversations when people are just acting out of anger instead of acting out of their desire for a different possibility to actualize with the person.
Yeah, I can totally relate to what you're saying. And I've been in those scenarios before. And something else that I've come to terms with or really realized, I think it's really been a big realization for me in the last year or two, is that if I do share something with someone, and how do I say this? I guess there's been a number of times where I've shared how I feel with someone, and they can't see it or relate to what I'm saying at all. From their perspective, they're going, I have no idea what you're talking about. And that's been a tough one, or someone being very unable to receive or comprehend what I'm sharing, and I've realized that has to be okay sometimes, because we all have such unique perspectives of reality, and it's kind of like when two people start talking about politics or religion and they don't agree. It's like, okay, there's a stalemate that happens a lot of times in life, and we're all such unique individuals living this human experience. And I was just talking with my partner Tanner yesterday, and he said, I just took a lot of time and like compassion and thoughtfulness and heart-centered being to communicate to someone, and it got spit right back at my face, and that was really hard to accept. And I said, yeah, that happens sometimes, because if we have any expectations that the person that's going to be receiving our words or something we've written or however we've delivered this message, and even if you try to wait for a time where you think they're most open, they still might not receive it in the way that we want them to. And so having that unattachment to the outcome, having maybe an intention for ourselves by speaking whatever we're speaking, what is my hope for the other side of me delivering this information to this other person? And I think intention is so important. If you just start spewing stuff to someone without any intention or awareness of why you're saying it, just because you're angry or upset or disappointed or whatever, or frustrated, that's kind of playing with fire. And if you have an intention in your heart of why you feel the need to share this information, it's because you're hoping for a positive shift in your relationship? Is it because you're hoping for better communication between the two of you? And perhaps there's always this less fun possibility that I need to communicate this thing because I feel that our relationship has come to a close. And even then, sometimes we can be a little less careful with our wording because we're like, whatever, we're done anyway. But it's just as important, I've learned, to try to be super conscious of our word choices and our intention behind what we're sharing. Because it's the reality that we're not best friends with every human being we cross paths with. And I don't think that's how life is meant to be, because we all show up for each other for reasons that we sometimes just can't even fathom. And but I think it's having that intention and taking the time to respond to something rather than reacting to it is also something that we just talked about yesterday in our family here, to be really conscious and take that time to respond from a calm and centered place in ourselves, rather than having like this instant reaction of like attack versus attack. It just never goes well.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it seems like if we have that, I need to say this in a very like now, then it's often a moment to just go, okay, pause for a moment. What is it I really need to say? And what am I hoping to create with this? Or to, where am I hoping this will lead to? Because if there's just this, I need to get it out, it's almost like, I need to throw up. Okay, but does someone actually need to be there when you're throwing up? Or you want to just like get it out of your system, right? And is the like extreme example, but if you don't need someone to watch that for you to get the relief you need. It's more just like purging it. But if you're actually desiring to create a different possibility with the person, then yeah, of course you want to create the space for that. I think the key is to acknowledge where we are in regards to that, and just, if anything, just become that much better, that much more aware. When we often can't just jump, as you mentioned in your past of being quite submissive, or just, it's okay, it's fine, to it's not okay, it's not fine, I'm gonna speak what I'm seeing and feeling. We'll have those pendulum swings until we find a new norm or a new possibility. But again, because people weren't trained in this type of communication, and only the people who have sought it out are somewhat trained in it, or have more awareness on different choices that they have, then it's going to be few and far between where you're really going to get that alignment of being with someone who's his ability to listen and, oh, I acknowledge what you just said, thank you for sharing, all those kind of tools that allow for the space to respond, and not that rush to get through it, or the pre-rehearsed dialogue in the head that you decided they need to hear this dialogue. It's like, well, what do you actually want to create? You may need to deliver that dialogue, or maybe just 5 words from it to create the same outcome, right? But people can get caught on the words they think they need to deliver to the person, instead of the why they're delivering those words and what they want or hope to achieve with that, right? And if you can kind of get to the underlying why, or what you're hoping for, then the words can start to actually follow suit rather than lead the charge.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny because just before there's any sharing of truths or feelings, I think it's really important. I've been witnessing in a number of people, including myself, people sharing how they're feeling when they feel really triggered by something someone else has said or done. They might feel offended or angry, or kind of this feeling of being caught off guard. And it's funny because I think often when someone says something, especially if it's someone we're close to and we know really well, and they might say or do something that really hits a spot in us, like a sore spot kind of. And I've worked with, there's a book called Radical Forgiveness. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but basically there's exercises you can do in the book. And a friend gave me one of the worksheets from that book years ago, and I was really not excited to do the worksheet the first time I ever got it. But basically the summary of how it works is you start by writing down your story from a victim standpoint of, this person did this to me and said this to me and they made me feel this way. And it's this big story, and you just spew that all out on the paper, like you're saying, get it out there. And then it takes you through this series of steps of going, okay, now what are my feelings? How do I really feel here? Do I feel angry? Do I feel sad? Do I feel disappointment? Do I feel abandonment? Or, you know, what am I feeling here? So you go through your actual emotions, which is just fascinating how many people can't even name their emotions. I didn't used to be able to until, gosh, probably 2009. I started taking some nonviolent communication classes, and I was like, wow, how am I actually feeling? Because we can throw in a lot of words that aren't actually feeling words. They're blame words, right? So we talk about our feelings, and then through this worksheet, it takes you to this point of, it's got a checklist of core beliefs that we have about ourselves as human beings. And things like, I'll never be good enough, or I'm not worthy of this, I don't deserve happiness. And it's like this list. And the first time I read through that list, I bawled my eyes out because I was like, oh my goodness, I do believe these things about myself. And so what it shows is that through the words and actions of others, whoever they are, it could have been a perfect stranger in the line at the grocery store that might have said something to us that was just like a stab to the heart or a punch to the stomach. And as it turns out, often when we have those feelings, it's because it hit something deep inside of us that was poking at an old core belief that we have about ourselves. And I've shared this with a few people lately, and it's just fascinating when you can turn it around and own that deep, deep emotion of pain within ourselves, and going, wow, when that person said, I don't like the way you're doing this, it's because I have this belief that I'm not capable of doing that in the first place. And when they said that, it felt really true, and it didn't feel good. And so I think that Radical Forgiveness book, and I think you can go online as well, and I think they have that exercise for free. I'm not sure what it's called, but I think you can print out the PDF on your printer from your computer. I highly recommend it. I've shared it with a few people lately, and they've been kind of floored by it, and that's how I felt. So I think before sharing any truth with anyone, to do an exercise like that, and like, what do I really believe about myself here that this person's actually showing me? And by the end, you can see the gift in how that person shared. And I've actually gone through that process before and contacted the person that I was angry at or frustrated with or whatever, and gone back to them and said, thank you for saying that, because it allowed me to really look deep inside and realize that I didn't think I was capable of doing this, or I never thought I was good enough to do this thing. But because I questioned myself and dug deep, I've now realized that I can do this thing, and it's my passion, and I'm capable. So thank you. And sometimes people might be like, okay, you know, but sharing gratitude with someone, regardless, you know, like, feels way better to share gratitude with someone and say thank you for being a guide or a teacher for me to learn this thing about myself. It feels way better than telling someone what you don't like about what they're doing. Mm-hmm. Okay, that was a long tangent, but I feel like it was a really important part of this, for me anyway, in my experiences.
To have the tools and have the resources and take that time or that moment to go through something like that, so that it's more refined and specific. It's one of those things, because we can do a process. Michael Brown wrote this book, The Presence Process, and it was just so valuable because he would speak things like, you know, don't shoot the messenger, get the message. So when you're, quote, triggered, right, it's just like, when was the last time I felt this, and when was the last time I felt this, and it really acknowledged that you can get to kind of this moment in childhood, and, you know, do this process of you know, acknowledging the feeling, you know, inner child type stuff. But those sorts of things can really allow a lot of the energy to dissipate and be like, oh, I don't have to carry this anymore. And then if it's, quote, still there on some level, then it is something to address in the present reality, right, with the person. Because sometimes things can go away through doing that process or the journal. It's like, oh, it's not a thing anymore. Thanks. You know, whatever you said doesn't really matter. And then other times it's like, oh, it's still kind of here as something to express. So it can be both, right? It can be going within, seeing, you know, they were triggered, there's something within us, let's look at what that is, or what is the core belief, or what have I made this mean, or what does this remind me of, or who does this remind me of? Oh, mom, dad, teacher, you know, and address those, or use your tools to, you know, forgive, release, clear, love, whatever your practice is, offer compassion to yourself and others, or forgiveness. and then return to this present moment and going, okay, now how would I like to approach this as I am now, right? As an adult, or as I am at this age, in this moment of time, with this person, in this linear time, reality, how would I like to approach this? So it allows us to address and acknowledge both. Sometimes one will lead to completion. You don't even have to address it in present time because it wasn't really about the person. And other times it's like, oh, it is actually, I'm someone to be a messenger in a sense to them, and offering them awareness of a pattern or behavior, or especially when it's one of those things where numerous people are saying, yeah, that person, they just ... right? And so especially that, when it comes to community and multiple people express something, a similar sentiment, right? Then it's like, okay, is this something they would like to hear? Is this something they're willing to change? And then approaching it from there.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a really valid point. And gosh, I just had another thought and then it's like tried to escape. Oh, something I've been seeing, just to tie in with all this, is there's a lot of humans on our earth who would rather be right and sever a relationship for the sake of being right, or having their way, or having things the way they want it. And I've witnessed friends, family members, coworkers, all kinds of people. It's gotten really intense, like you said, with the intensity of what's happening on the planet right now. I've been noticing people really pushing each other away because our fears come up, and it's easier to hang on to our fearful patterns and our beliefs about ourselves that are clouded with our fears. And it kind of all ties into this big murky ball of ickiness. And yeah, I mean, I've been caught up in this a number of times as well. And, I don't want to push anyone out of my life. I'd rather that we try to come to some similar view of whatever's going on. And by asking questions of each other, I find that a really useful tool. Before, or in conjunction with sharing how you're feeling, to ask for clarity. Like, you said this thing, what did you mean? Or what was the intention when you said that? Or could you further explain why you said that thing in that email? And gosh, right now with the types of communication that are available, I mean, we've been traveling for the last 10 days now, and we've been visiting with a lot of friends and family members, and the same topics of conversation keep coming up. The frustrations that people are having with texting and Facebooking and emailing, and that lack of personal emotion and heartfelt connection of human communication and things like body language. And with all these electronic devices we're losing that ability to read one another. And so you're like, well, what did that person mean when they typed that? That sounded, really rude. How dare they? Or, and so it's easy for us to jump to these conclusions when we're reading written words, because they can be interpreted in 50 different ways. And so like asking for clarity, I think, is really a powerful tool. And it's hard to misconstrue that. Like, could you clarify what you meant by that? Or could you give me some more information or whatever? And so back to what I was starting to say was, people are really quick to dispose of one another in 2017. And I've met a lot of people that if they get one little inkling that this person isn't a good person, or, some of their old fears or patterns or wounds come up that trigger something from earlier in life that says, this is not a good person, get rid of this person out of your life. They don't love and support me fully. Yeah, I mean, doing a lot of our own work and reflecting upon that, and just really diving deeper into a space of love with people and with ourselves, I think is just so important right now. And reaching out to connect further with people rather than withdrawing, because I'm watching a lot of people withdrawing, and a lot of them are thinking that they are operating at their highest capacity, when I think it's easy for us to trick ourselves into thinking we're operating from this high level of consciousness and spiritual awareness, but really we're just nurturing those seeds of fear that are within us. And it's so easy for us to see it in other people, and it's often hardest to see it in ourselves. So I guess I'm not sure where I'm going with this, but it's just something that I've been witnessing sometimes in myself. And like I said, it's really easy to see it happening in my friends and family members. Yeah.
Well, it's easy to maintain the fears when you don't test them against reality in the present time, right? So we had a fear, they don't care about me. Well, if you don't show up and allow them to care about you, then it'll be confirmed, right?
Absolutely.
And so it's so easy to just withdraw. So then your reality doesn't have to be tested, or your beliefs don't have to be tested, right? Oh, no one cares about me. Well, if you never go outside, it's going to be kind of hard for people to love and care about you, because they don't even see you. Like, you're not even in front of them. You don't even give them the chance to care about you. So that's the great way to confirm it. So just really looking at, how am I confirming what I believe to be true in my life now? And just keep asking that. How am I confirming what I believe to be true in my life now? And especially those broad stroke statements, like, no one cares about me, it's like, how many people are on the planet? How many people have you met? How many people have you given that option to? How many people have you really invested in and really cared and nurtured, right? How often have you extended that? And so just start to that truth testing is more like, okay, is this actually true? Am I willing to change this? Because sometimes we could be like, 5-year-old who's like, nope, no one cares. And I'm just going to sit in my room forever and not eat and not go outside and not play. Right? And then it's like, okay, well, that is a choice. And now more than ever, because you can even give yourself the illusion of connection through isolation, right? We have that weird paradox going on with all the technology. We're more connected than ever and more isolated than ever, because we're not actually meeting in that real time flow that is like, that energizes our body and gives us the sense of, oh, I do actually enjoy living. Yeah, it's the isolation and the technology and the interfacing and the non-response or the delays and then the fill in the blank game that our mind loves to do, right? It's master of fill in the blank. So notice how much you're filling in the blank with text and email and Facebook, right? They say one line and then you fill in the blank with like 3 paragraphs. And you're like, they didn't say those 3 paragraphs. That was your mind filling in the blanks. So how about you check in with what else they were meaning, by, as you suggested, asking for more information. Could you clarify this? And just so we can have more ease, so acknowledging the times we're in are pretty crazy in a lot of respects. And it's also an opportunity to gain more mastery, right? To go, wow, how could I effectively communicate through text and email and Facebook? And what would make my life greater? Can you include more in-person connection? And can you test those things you believe to be true, by kind of stepping out and going, wait, I'm going to see if this is actually true. I'm going to allow the possibility that it's not, right? Because if we're not allowing it to the possibility that it's different, we're just going to ensure we do the things that will prove that to be true, right? No one cares. You're going to show up like at a bar or something where everyone's wasted, and no one's going to care about you in that context unless they want something from you. But if you go to like some other space where people have the capacity to care for you, you're giving them the opportunity and you the opportunity to create a new possibility in your life. So yeah, totally.
And so, I mean, kind of to sum up from my perspective, what needs to happen more, and myself included for sure, and I've really been working on this, and the results are incredible. And it really boils down to vulnerability to me. So I'm hearing in what you're saying, put yourself out there. Like, let people see you. Let people hear you. Like, show who you are. If we can all do that, if we can all be vulnerable, and starting with the people who are closest to us, I think if we all wore our hearts on our sleeves a little bit more and allowed ourselves to laugh and to cry and to just really share in the present moment how we're feeling about life. Are you feeling scared? If you're scared, share it with someone. If you're feeling ashamed about something, share it and the shame will disappear. If you're feeling guilty, share that. It's all these emotions can be diffused and smoothed out and turn into love and joy and a peaceful feeling if we just speak them and share them and show them. And so, yeah, I think I would just like to close my part of sharing this by saying, put yourself out there a little bit, you know, show your true colors, be that beautiful, vulnerable human being that we all have inside of us that may have been squished down by whatever life circumstances we've all experienced. But relearning or deepening the practice of vulnerability and showing our emotions and sharing how we feel is like what the world needs on such a humongous level right now. Like I don't even know how to put that in words, but I see it every day, all the time, constantly. And I'm so grateful when I cross paths with people who are practicing that, practicing greater vulnerability. And some people don't even know they're doing it. But I've sometimes in the last couple of weeks since we left home and we've been on the road, I've just been really expressing my gratitude when someone shares something that's vulnerable, or, you know, they shed a tear or anything. And I'm just like, wow, thank you so much for sharing that with me. I feel so grateful right now. And it can take us to incredible places of self-awareness and of deep, deep connection with others. And I think that's what's one of the big things that gets me up out of bed every day is incredible heart-centered connection with other people. And for every person that starts doing that, it's going to affect dozens of people around each one of us. And it really has this huge potential to have a positive rippling effect around the planet right now. And I think it's the single number one most important thing that humanity needs right now.
Thank you. Yeah, and I would definitely agree with that. And you know, what would it be like, especially if we went around with the willingness to all those beliefs that we've inherited or carrying about, you know, people don't understand me, people don't get me, no one's where I am, blah, blah, blah. You know, all those kind of isolating type belief patterns that has everyone just withdrawing. Just the invitation I would suggest is having a practice every day of disconfirming those beliefs. Like have a practice every day. What's one thing I could do where this wouldn't be true? You know, so say show up somewhere where, you know, say if you go in front of a counselor, they're going to listen and respond to you. So you can't confirm the belief that no one listens to me if you choose to show up with someone who's like a professional listener or something. So I'm just saying just one thing each day to disconfirm what you believe to be true, that is just stuff you've inherited or carried, or, you know, that was true 10 years ago, but what is available now, and just inviting that new reality and that new possibility so that we can meet in our hearts, so we can create a new world or have a sub world that's vulnerable and opening and gifting and receiving and circulating energy and bringing that vitality of living and the possibility of thriving. So thank you everyone for joining us today on this 12th episode of Walking the Path, and we'll see you all next time. We appreciate that you're here.